Good morning. My name's Liz Rowlinson of A Place in the Sun. I'm here with Chase Buchanan about financial planning for expats in Portugal. Thank you for joining us. I'm here with Mark Kinally, who's a financial advisor from Chase Buchanan Private Wealth Management. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Liz.
Um, well, moving to Portugal is a very exciting prospect. It's one of our most popular countries for climate, lifestyle, beautiful coastlines, but there's also financial complexities. So, visas, property, investments, taxes, pensions. So today we're going to talk about how working with Chase Buchanan can make that a true, very smooth transition and highlight common problems that might be avoided. So, Mark, would you mind telling us about your personal journey to Portugal and what you do there?
Yeah, sure. Be a pleasure. I mean, a little bit about me. I'm in my 40s. I have worked in financial services for about 20 years with some large companies like Barclays Wealth International, Merrill Lynch, before joining Chase 10 years with St James's Place in the UK. Um, I've been coming here since I was a young boy, so well over 30 years now, and always loved it. It always seemed and felt like a holiday destination. So to move my young family and my wife and our dog, who goes mental on the beaches, has been a bit of a dream come true. And to continue kind of my financial advice journey with Chase Buchanan has been brilliant. We're all loving it. So it's been perfect. And to then break down my role as you mentioned and asked. So essentially, it's to help people move to Portugal and help them when they're here. I find that my clients sort of love the fact that I've been through the same journey and then know other expats and can help with that. So I tend to work with three main areas. So that's retirees, quite a big popular choice, especially in the Algarve. Professionals, again in the Algarve, but in Lisbon as well, and then families. So we help make sense of their finances before and after they move to Portugal. Moving, I find, can be very stressful, let alone to a new country. So I think it all starts with planning that early, so they can make it as easy for them and or their family. And I love to make that as easy as possible, so they can enjoy all Portugal has to offer, like I've been doing so.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to hear from Steve Wiltermood, one of your happy clients, in later in the webinar. But first up, timing is everything when moving abroad, isn't it? Planning. What's the best moment to start your well, I guess visa application in Portugal, I think for most people who haven't got that golden Irish passport or something.
Yeah, the European passport's great. I was very lucky that my dad is Irish, so
Ah,
I fell into that area. So when I do help clients with visa applications, I've got my family through slightly differently, but I was quite advantageous. But it's a great questions, and looking at visas as well as moving to a country can feel quite daunting. I always find. So starting early, I think, is the key area here. Um, there's lots of visa specialists out there, lots of information on Google or ChatGPT. The Portuguese embassy website is fantastic. So getting your bearings and understanding or speaking to people, Facebook community groups is also a great insight. Um, will start that process, and starting early is really important. Finding out what visa there is, there's a few.
mhm.
With those specialists, they can help your hand, so they can let you know exactly what's needed, so you don't fall foul or make that process longer or a bit more
Mhm.
tedious as it's in another language. And being in Europe, there's a fair bit of extra bureaucracy that can happen here. So yeah, it's working out those visas, potentially working with someone to make it as hassle free. If it's the D7, that tends to be what most retirees come on. You'd probably be looking at about 6 to 10 weeks if everything is organized and in place,
Mhm.
before you get the visa to be able to move to Portugal. Then once you've moved to Portugal, you're probably looking at another 10 to 12 weeks to get that residency approval and all the paperwork. It can take longer, it can be quicker. Again, bit of potluck with the bureaucracy here.
Yeah, I have to say though that Portugal is one of the easiest visas to get compared with the likes of its neighbours Spain and some other countries. So I think that's very reassuring from all the people I interview that it's not too tricky. So from a financial point of view with the visa, um, there's also something to consider about selling their UK property before they move or not, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean that's always probably someone's biggest thought process, and that comes down to probably two major themes. One is financial. It's probably going to be someone's largest asset that they own. If it's not, it's definitely going to be one of. Um, and it might mean that they have to sell it to because they want to buy out here, and they might not be able to afford without buying. The other is emotional. It might be their family home. They might have lived in it for years. Might be a lovely, charming cottage or a brand new build when they bought it, but it's theirs, and they then have certain attachments to them. So those elements obviously can put a bit of a spanner in the works. Timing for how the property market might be. The average time in the UK is probably 6, 7 months to sell. If the market's slower or subdued, it could take longer. Likewise, if it's racing away, it might move a bit quicker than your time plan. So it's kind of timing, understanding if you want to sell it or not. The tax element on it is quite simply if you sell your home as a UK resident, there's no capital gains tax on that. If you move to Portugal and then sell it, there's potential capital gains tax. So the longer you don't sell it or the more it rises as a non-UK resident, there's more likely chance that you'll pay capital gains tax on that. So that's obviously another aspect. So it's chatting through clients' positions, emotions, what's important to them, and then helping them guide them make the right decisions.
Okay, great. And there'll be people here that have UK financial advisors. Can they continue the relationship once they've moved to Portugal with that advisor?
It's really important. So pre-Brexit, they probably could. Post-Brexit, it's very unlikely. It's become a lot more complex.
Mhm.
So a lot of clients that come to us have got long-term or trusted financial advisors, and it might feel daunting to that they're going to be left at the border, as it were, and their hands not going to be held when they move to Portugal. But actually, I've found that it's not really a UK financial advisor's speciality to understand the products in Portugal, the tax, the laws, what advisors or funds and what is important to them. And even if they did know Portugal, would they know the rest of the UK? So it's probably a good thing. There are a case on very few areas where advisors have the right regulation and passporting through the EU that they can do this, but it's usually very unlikely. So it might be daunting, but it's usually worth speaking to someone locally so that they understand everything and can help them not fall into any pitfalls or troubles later down the line.
Great. Okay. Are there any important steps or pitfalls of people make when shifting their investments to from the UK to Portugal?
I think understanding the tax and the tax system in the UK and Portugal before they move is quite key. Speaking to someone that is an advised as a professional is also key, because if you speak to someone that's done it, they may not actually know the full rules. Certain friends give the best advice, but that they know, but actually it might not be factually correct. So it's knowing the tax rules. The two main pitfalls that we see are ISAs. So when you're in the
Oh, yeah.
UK, they're such a powerful tool, but when you move and you're no longer a UK resident, of course you can keep an ISA. You can't add to it. But if you and your partner have built up ISAs over many years, there could be potential large gains in there. If you don't crystallize them when you're a UK resident and you move to Portugal, those gains are going to become capital gains in Portugal, and therefore you when clients have a lot going on in their lives, they might not realize that, and that becomes a nasty shock to them. The other element is pensions. Whilst they can be ridiculously tax advantageous in Portugal, um, there's no tax-free cash. It's not registered in Portugal. So that can also give clients a bit of a shock or a surprise. So having those conversations before you move, before you're actually in Portugal and making those plans and starting early makes sure that hopefully you don't fall foul and chatting to people so you know them.
Great. Thank you. Of course, once they've moved their investments to Portugal, with your help, the next consideration is sort of how they live within Portugal's tax environment to their advantage. What benefits might there be for them when they're there?
So Portugal, as well as having visas, easier visas, as you mentioned earlier, is definitely seen as a very tax advantageous location
Hmm.
by UK residents. It's not always the case. So there's a point of checking what you may or may not be able to have in Portugal. There's something called NHR, which, if someone's doing their research on Portugal, they may have seen. NHR originally was a lot easier to get. It's on its second version, which everyone nicknames NHR 2.0. And if one is able to get that, it makes it very efficient for any UK pension income, any UK dividends, capital gains tax. So that becomes very advantageous to the client. There's a progressive Portuguese tax income tax scale.
Yeah.
And capital gains tax, if you don't have NHR, it's not massively higher than Portugal, but it's slightly higher. So it's always worth doing the research, working out what area, a bit like the visas, what visa you'd get, what tax position and bracket you'd fall into, so that you don't get really far down the line and suddenly you're kind of
Hmm.
finding a surprise or a big pothole in your way.
Hmm. And then there's wealth tax, capital gains tax, I think.
So there's wealth tax on properties. So if you own a property, you get a certain exemption, and that changes from year to year. If you own a property over that value, then there's a tiered wealth tax. So over 1 million, over two, you'll pay certain amounts of wealth tax on that property. It tends to put a little bit of fear in people when they first read it or understand it, but when you talk it through with clients and the lower values that they get and other potential advantages and cost of living here, it tends to subdue any initial kind of alarm bells that
Hmm.
can be raised.
I think you've referred to capital gains tax before, um, in terms of the UK side.
Yeah, so in Portugal, there's a capital gains tax. It's slightly higher than the UK, so it's 28% at the moment. So if you realize again, if you sell a property but reinvest in that property within 2 years, you can roll that capital gain into the new property, so you won't have to pay that. If you sell a property and you don't buy another Portuguese property, there's capital gains tax on 50% of the gain.
Okay. But I think on a positive note, I don't think there's inheritance tax, is there, in Portugal?
Yeah, so the huge win for clients is inheritance tax. So it's not known as inheritance tax; it's known as stamp duty. And
Mm.
that's basically passing the asset over to your family or friends or loved ones, whoever that might be. If it is family, then there's zero stamp duty on property, cash, any assets that you hold. If it's not a family member, then it's taxed up to 10%, depending on what the asset is to a non-family member. So still a huge saving from the UK.
Great. And Portugal has a double taxation treaty with the UK, which means you're not taxed twice, etc. as well.
Yeah, so it's definitely worth understanding where one should be taxed. So if it's taxed in the UK, and if it's taxed at a lower rate, the credit that you've paid in the UK, you will get offset on your Portuguese tax bill. So especially in the earlier years, it's definitely worth noting, if you still have UK income, where the right tax to pay is, and then obviously reporting that in the UK. Even if you have NHR, lots of people fall foul that they don't realise they have to report it in Portugal. So that's sometimes something to bear in mind as well. It's not a dual taxation treaty, so I paid it in the UK. It's done. No, there's a reporting element in Portugal and making sure that you've paid the right amount as a Portuguese resident.
I guess that's where your ongoing advice counts, isn't it? When you work with a client during their new life in Portugal.
Yeah, holding their hands, and in the early stages, I find there's WhatsApps or calls of what's this, Mark, or what's that, and understanding there's probably going to be larger expenses, because when you move over here, we moved over in the summer, and lots of people coming out visiting, they weren't necessarily staying with us. But when you do have a property here, you do live here, you suddenly realize that you're a bit more popular than you are in the UK, especially in the warmer months. So when you move to a new place, you're looking at budgeting. If you're retiring, there might be elements that you've always saved, and you're then not saving out of income. You're working out that you're never going to run out, and helping their clients hold their hands through that position. So I find at the beginning, higher expenses with all those areas we talked about, and visiting areas, sightseeing, trying out new restaurants, meeting new people, there's hobbies, there's always a bigger expense. So letting people know that, so they don't suddenly go, well, we were supposed to spend less money here, it will settle down. So it's ensuring that's in the plan, and obviously the ongoing advice and relationship. I find that's really important and reassuring for clients when you talk that through.
I'm sure. How can clients make sure their pension and investments are performing effectively while, under Portugal's tax reporting rules?
So it's understanding what they have, what they've got, and what the implications tax wise are if they stay where they are. Um, if they move them to Portugal, or a compliant location in the EU for Portugal, it's then understanding what then the advantages or benefits are to them. So it's understanding that, coming up with a bespoke financial plan, advising them on what the tax advantages are or disadvantages are pre and post moving, and then the ongoing reviews to make sure that the investments are fit for purpose, and understanding what they can or can't do now as Portuguese residents, and how they report that. So there's definitely an environment here with pensions that it's more tax efficient, especially if one's taken tax-free cash in the UK. And it's just holding their hand through that process, so that they feel secure, and they know they're doing the right thing.
Great. Right, so to appreciate that difference, we're going to have a quick chat with one of your very happy clients, Steve, who's experienced this firsthand about their journey. So we'll do that. Right, I'm here with Steve Wiltermood. Hi, Steve.
Hello, hi.
Okay, so tell me how you got there.
So I've been here since 2021. we used a company to help us with all the necessary paperwork to move from the UK to Portugal because I think if you can afford it, that's the best way to do it because we ended up with a sort of 90-page document to get our first visa. So it's quite, especially if you don't know the language properly, it's quite difficult to do it on your own. So we used a company called, I don't know if you want me to say their name or not, but anyway, we used a company that specialized in that sort of thing. And then we rented for a year till we could find somewhere because it's very difficult at that time because it was just after COVID.
Mm.
And then we found somebody somewhere in Lule Hills.
Nice.
So we live in the hills in Lule. So
Brilliant. In the Algarve. Brilliant. Okay, so
yeah, I'll
yes,
go
I
for
hear you about the using expert help, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So obviously you talked about the logistics of the move, but what made you feel assured about trusting the advice of Chase Buchanan that you used for
So
managing your financial side?
so I'm a business owner. I get cold called all the time for people to try and get me into invest, which I won't do from a cold call. So I listened to there was an advert on the radio for Chase. I think it was on Kiss. Um, then I come and visited the offices without coming in just to check the office out. And then I rang up, spoke to Robert, and we've had quite a good relationship ever since, really. So
It's all about trust, isn't it, with these things? Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
and first of all, I wanted to come and see, that it was a bona fide. Obviously, Trust Chase has got a massive name anyway, hasn't it? But I looked at the websites, all the usual things you would do, uh, due diligence, really. So
Very wise. So reflecting on your move now that you've been there, as you say, since 21, what was the biggest challenge and how did Chase Buchanan help you with that?
I suppose moving our pensions.
Mm,
My wife's pension was moved quite easily. My pension was a lot more difficult because that wasn't Chase's fault. That was because the company that I got a pension through had bought 12 properties, so it couldn't be moved until they were all sold. And then it got quite near the deadline when the government changed the rules on pensions. So I would say that was the most taxing, but fortunately it all got done in time. So
yeah, having that expert help must have really kind of given you a bit of less stress about when the whole move is quite stressful, isn't it?
yeah, I suppose so.
So what one piece, you've gone through everything now, what one piece of advice would you share with someone preparing to move to Portugal or even somewhere else in Europe?
It would it would be to reiterate what I said at the beginning, really. If you've got it's not that much money, but if you've got the finances to get an expert company involved to help you to do all the paperwork and everything, I would always recommend that because to do it without them would be an absolute nightmare, especially in Portugal because there's so much red tape here. So
Yeah, just unfamiliar red tape as well. All
yeah,
right. Well, look, thank you very much, Steve, and best of luck with your new life in Portugal. Thank you.
thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Brilliant. Well, I'm sure you've got lots more happy clients in Portugal and wider. But how can, I mean, Steve touched on this, but how can you be sure that Chase Buchanan or any other financial advisory firm is properly authorized to offer advice in Portugal?
It's really important. So it's a great question, Liz. It's worth checking where that firm is authorized, and if they are authorized, you can easily check this on the register that they say that they're authorized. So, for example, Chase Buchanan is authorized rather in Cyprus. So that's the CISEC regulator. We chose CISEC as it's the closest regulation to the UK, which helps put clients at mind at ease rather.
Mhm.
Another element is we're also regulated by the FCA, so that's known. You can check on both registers. We also work in the US, so we're on the SEC US register, so you can check that online. we're perfectly happy to do that because obviously we are. So it's then finding out what qualifications the advisor can have. With at Chase Buchanan, all of our advisors have a UK level 4 qualification. So that's the minimum level that any UK advisor must hold to advise clients in the UK. That's not always the case in different EU states. So it's a minimum benchmark that helps clients understand what their regulator is by the financial advice that is given, and the advisor is regulated, and what level that they hold as well are two key areas, I'd say.
Yeah, Steve, I mean, there are some less scrupulous advisors out there, and Steve had obviously done his due diligence, as he mentioned. So, and I think you also have a partnership with the Met Police, don't you?
So yes, we've got two areas which I think makes us stand out. We've got a partnership with the Metropolitan Police, and we worked with them with the Little Book of Internet Scams. So we work with other large organizations to produce that booklet. You can find that on our website. You can also find it on the Met Police website. The other element is the CII, which is the Chartered Institute of Insurance. Lots of individuals use them to get their qualifications in the UK, and their advice body, as it were. And we hold a partnership with them as recognised as a partnering firm within Europe. So we're the only European firm at the moment that holds that. And that effectively means that we demonstrate their core values and advice rules as a business. So those two elements, when we let clients know or they see them on our website, also helps put them at ease. And I think hopefully makes us stand out from our competition a little higher as well.
Well, yes, there's some good credentials there. But what other sets Chase Buchanan apart from other advisors in terms of maybe the way you conduct your business as well?
Ongoing reviews. Lots of clients say they will. Lots of advisors say they will. So it's holding their hand from before they move, when they move, and telling them about the tax implications, introducing them to trusted professionals, whether that's real estate agents, tax lawyers, tax accountants, financial FX brokers when moving large portions of money. If you do it through the banks, it's going to be very expensive. You can do it through Revolut or Wise at a really effective rate, but you're going to get that rate at that time. You're also not potentially going to feel too trusted with an app to move a large sum of money, especially if you've sold your house, for example. So there's foreign exchange dealers that we can recommend. They can put things, price points in the market. So if they get hit and you're busy moving or out seeing friends or hosting friends or down at the beach or whatever it might be that you're doing, if you miss those points in the market, it doesn't matter because you put them in, and they can make some big important changes. We are also independent. So we're not bound by any particular provider or any particular products. So it means that when we are giving tailored financial advice, that it's independent, and what's important to that client and the advice, we would work with the most appropriate product provider and then put the right funds in there. Those are probably the key areas that I say that I work with clients and add value.
Yeah, it's the sort of personalized approach, and your sort of history and reputation, I suppose, that really stands out there.
Yeah, and the expat world, it's very small. So if you don't do what you said you were going to do, people will talk about that. If you do and you make their life easy, that you're recommended, and your reputation is very, very important, because there's not as many UK speakers in the Algarve or in Lisbon or Porto or wherever you move to. and therefore you stick together, or you go onto those Facebook groups and ask for advice. Likewise, there can be negative comments,
Mm.
and that's one thing that no one wants to fall foul of.
No, there's a lot more transparency, isn't there, out there about rogue operators. So it's word of mouth that people recommend great people like yourselves.
Yeah,
Um,
I've had lots of introductions off the back of that, and becoming almost friends with lots of clients and building great relationships. That certainly helps.
Okay, you mentioned we've talked about double taxation, and you've also
Mhm.
alluded to currency fluctuations just now with using um, a currency transfer company. Um, there's also tax residency planning, pension transfers planning as well.
Yeah, so with the double taxation, it's working out the tax, understanding where you'll be taxed. Um, I live here, I understand it. My friends do, my colleagues do. We speak to experts about it. If it is complex, we will pass you to the right individual, as we know lots of experts in probably a local area to you. Um, so that's definitely important. The currency exposure, it's so personal when you move here, because you're constantly, especially if you've lived in the UK your whole life, which I had before moving here, you're constantly going, well, how much was that cup of coffee? How much was that meal? How much was that supermarket shop in sterling terms? So you buy a barbecue, or you move your goods here, or you're charged something in euros. It's You're wired to work out what that conversion is. If you've got UK income still, or it makes you feel more comfortable holding pounds in the UK, and you're transferring money, if the rate is going up, you feel great about it. You're like, oh, I won't move too much. Likewise, if it's going down, you feel like you're sort of chasing a falling knife, as it were. And each month when you move money, it sort of hurts you a little bit. So working with a foreign exchange professional definitely helps. And then obviously with pensions, if you do move them, you can keep them in the same currency. So you can keep them in sterling. If it's a bad time to move it to euros, you might still have a need to have some element of sterling. So even if it's a good time, we might not move all of it into euros, being your new day-to-day currency, for example. And the exact same for investments. I think I've covered everything there. Was there anything that I missed off?
I think that's right. Also, what if clients decide to um, but maybe Portugal, they love Portugal, but they might have to come home, or they might even change country. Are you able to advise them on that?
Yeah, so I think probably the current theme here has been looking at it early.
Mm.
If it hasn't, that's what I'm going to say. So it's important to look at these things early. Um, if you move job and it's quite quickly, it can be quite difficult to do. But the earlier you look at where you might be moving to, what tax advantages there might be in Portugal, or to in that home country, whether it's the UK,
Mm.
France, Cyprus, Malta, wherever it is in the world. Um, it's understanding that, and it's not necessarily stopping the journey. If it's going back to the UK, we'd make sure the client lands back softly in the UK, knowing everything. And if it's to another area or country that we work in, it might be just a smooth transition, that before they move, we work with the advisor in that country,
Hmm.
and then pass them over. So unlike the UK, where the advisor has to leave you at the border, we can have a really smooth transition and post move position to understand everything and make sure everything's set up. So just like moving here, it's understanding what the tax is in both those locations, what the visa requirements are, if it's another currency, working out all of those different things that may or may trip you up with obviously a lot going on moving and the processes, visas, etc., of what that might be. So we can definitely help, and we try and make it as seamless as if you're coming to Portugal to wherever you're going.
Yeah, something just to finish off on is estate and succession planning, which works very differently in a lot of European countries, and that's something you also can advise in both Portugal and and the onward country if there is one.
Yeah, so as long as it's a country that we are regulated in and provide advice, we would give advice on all areas, including estate planning, understanding what the inheritance tax position is, which may or may not change the individual's minds on the move, but it makes them go in with their eyes definitely wide open and aware of all the positions on their financial on all their finances and their future finances on the journey.
Okay. Well, I think we've tried to cover as much as possible. It's clearly a real sense of preparation, planning with your help. A successful move to Portugal will go so much more smoothly with sort of all these sort of these issues talked about in the run up, and then you holding people's hand as they make that move. So thank you very much, Mark and Steve. And how can people get in touch with you if they're keen to know more?
Thanks, Liz. Very easy to find us on the Chase Buchanan website. Chasebuchanan.com. You can email myself. My email's on there. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. So just look us up, and be a pleasure to receive your call or email or online inquiry.
Thanks again, Mark. I hope
Thanks,
that's
Liz.
been useful.